Our next reader is Vyt Bakaitis, who actually, like Pierre, had been a student of Robert at Bohr. And if you, once you go down the room, you will see the living proof, his new book of poetry, silent and carve out a space middle of the table that's full of Kelly's books. But that's a good sign. So please welcome Vyt.
Der Söhnen, der du nimmer geglaubt, nun da bist, Freundesgestalt mir annimmst. So I salute Robert Kelly in words borrowed from Hölderlin. It's a scrap he discarded. In any case, I'm here to talk about a little bit about Unquell the Dawn Now. And incidentally, I've been a student of Robert for many years, but not at Bard. I think I first started paying attention to his work when I read Bill Knott's comment expressing jealousy that he'd only had so far 2 books published. Robert Kelly had something like 20 books of poems out already, so I knew I had to take an interest. Unquell the Dawn Now. The title of a collaboration between Robert Kelly and Schult to carry over the sound patterns established in an incomplete, longer poem by Hölderlin from its German original into an equivalent English. When considered and kept in a double bilingual focus as a parallel reading, the resulting correspondences will yield and register a string of chiming surprises. And there is less qualm induced over accuracy, since a homophonic procedure, by the very nature of its definition, has to stay close to the original. So that if we make allowance for shifts in, let's say, variant modulations due to regional accents, a straightforward, otherwise uninflected reading of Unquell the Dawn Now will stand in for Unquell der Donau exactly. But where to begin? I'll stick to the title. If we look at it for its meaning, it simply says, the German simply says, at the source of the Danube. For the word Quell, here given in its masculine German form, which is considered by tradition more poetic somehow, conveyed into English literally means wellspring, source, or origin. By etymology, though, it leads back to its source in Old High German for meanings like torture, torment, killing. Middle English still kept it as slaughter, a common word for slaughter in an agricultural society. So now where to begin? By this, we should begin to see that the genius of the title Kelly and Schult contrived is an instance of a fuller translation, that it encompasses more than the homophonic and more accurately of both the aim and effect of much of Hölderlin's poetry. Like his exact contemporary Wordsworth, the great German romantic Friedrich Hölderlin never quite got over the first kiss of a revolutionary dawn. In fact, both poets kept hovering rather ambiguously, at times deliriously, around radical extremes of duty and deity, nature and need. Though Hölderlin lived nearly as long, from 1770 to 1843, his effective career was far shorter than Wordsworth. Just midway through his life, when what is now assessed to have been a severe schizophrenic derangement fully manifested itself, Hölderlin was apprehended and consigned to a local clinic for an unspecified term as a hazard to himself and others. He stayed there as an inmate for just under a year, and for part of that time was kept in isolation and under restraint. The poet was certified as harmlessly insane prior to his release, and the closing entry on him in the clinic's logbook simply reads, "Gone for a walk." Hölderlin was obsessed with the idea of origins from the beginning of his career. Whether verbal, tribal, or spiritual, and from early on and through the period of his brief maturity, the preoccupations registered a pattern of at first elegiac, then distinctly darkening to tragic. The recurring dynamic in the work tends from daybreak to breakdown, as his persistent restlessness shifts and drifts from clear perception to dire apprehension. The memorable lines that Shakespeare gave Ophelia as an assessment of Hamlet apply to Hölderlin as well. "Oh, what a noble mind is here o'erthrown, a full-blown youth blasted with ecstasy." And yet the wonder is that Hölderlin committed to write lucid, succinct verse even after he was certified to be insane. Just a few months before his breakdown, the young philosopher Schelling, who had been his classmate, was distressed and gives this in an account in a letter to Hegel, who had been a roommate some years before of Hölderlin's. And Schlegel reported that in conversation, Hölderlin now could no longer put two sentences together to make sense. Yet even then, and until the end of his life, he continued to produce poems that work and read as accomplished lyrics. The writing stays balanced with a new element of guarded humor, something entirely new, I think, with the one exception of a pun in the poem on the Rhine. Ein Rätsel ist Rheinensprungenes. The pun being Rheinensprungenes, pure origin. The pure part is Rhine, which puns on the river's name. So it's sort of like derivation is one big riddle. All right, no more jokes. The odd thing, and here I've lost track, but about these poems also for the fact that there's this humor, it's sort of like a tightly controlled hysteria is the form of the humor. And it's somewhat reminiscent of the Sweeney poems by T.S. Eliot in that effect. And Eliot actually was the one who knocked Hölderlin out of any sense of a canon, he said, because his idea of canonic lineup was, he saw as horizontal, and Hölderlin somehow was vertical. So there you go. I still don't understand what the distinction might be. It worked for Tom Eliot. And before I shift into I brought along some of my own readers' notes, which are otherwise translations from Hölderlin, to kind of corroborate the gist of the what I sense as the effectiveness of Unquell the Dawn Now, because it compresses really so much of Hölderlin in that one phrase. So I think it's a genius of translation, that one line, one title. But to end this small tribute to Robert, I give him back lines he once in a preface to a book of his own poems, wrote, "Poetry is glory and revelation and mystery, suddenly unveiled. Poetry is not inherited. Poetry is not given. Poetry is what no one knows." So, now we'll shift to something. Oh, and by the way, the opening words of salute I offered here translate as something like, "Bring us together you do, all too incredibly. You are here now, assuming toward me a friend's guise." And that's the sense I have of today's event, with Robert as the focus, the generating focus of this friendship. Lynn. So I'll read some late poems which are sometimes short, sometimes longer. Like this one, In Spring. While fields all hum renewal, looking refreshed, and over the mountains with green trees, brighter clouds breeze by, oh, what a treat for people to go off alone among the banks, enjoying calm and health, a glowing bliss, and friendly laughter not too far away. That's from a guy who couldn't put two sentences together in conversation. And here's actually, among other things, here's one in his last years he tended to essentially write out poems as people requested them, as inscriptions to visitors. And he was very deferential, obsequiously so, to any visitor, addressing often people as Your Highness, Your Nobility, so this, that. And in turn he would sign them, Your most obsequious servant. Yeah. And this actually, but in his last years he assumed also pseudonyms, various pseudonyms. And in fact, when the first two-volume edition of his own work was brought to him, and he was asked his opinion, he said, "Yes, I've looked at it, this looks fine, everything's fine, but you know, I haven't, this name, Hölderlin, is not a name I'm associated with. It's either Scardanelli or Salvador Rosa. So I don't know where they got this from, but and this little poem was written as an inscription, but not to a stranger, but to this young student who had befriended Hölderlin, and actually very successfully, to the degree that Hölderlin trusted him more than he'd allowed himself to trust others at the time. His name was Weiblinger. So he inscribed this, and it's significant also, it's the last one on record which he signed with his own name as Hölderlin. If people are happy, why even raise the question whether they're being good or pledged to virtuous living? Once your mood lifts, you have less to complain of. Belief takes to the same satisfaction. Your most humbly obedient Hölderlin. And this was the one that there was a preliminary tribute to Robert last night. This is the one that I had in the wrong pocket when my turn came. And I meant to read Fun Life, das fröhliche Leben, which kind of spins off the accusation of happiness that Robert tossed off at us last night. Fun Life. When I come into the when I come into the meadow, now I'm in the clear out here, still the same sweet pious fellow, despite thorns, no worse for wear. Winds that blow right through my clothing keep my spirit keen to know what confines the inner being, for the day reprieve comes through. Faced with a tame composition of green trees standing nearby, Like the signboard to a tavern, I find it's hard to walk on by. Since a spell of settled weather these days seems what I most want, more you have no right to question once I've given my response. Now it's to the lovely brookside, find a happy way to go. But it's dull, as on the inside, as untidy to pile through, with the trail into the tree line vanishing before the top, with the wind howls on the pathway, and you're wide-eyed looking up. Up there, on the highest hill, I'll sit right through the afternoon while the wind roars down the ridgeline to the tower's beating bell. Contemplation brings the heart to peace the way it's pictured here, for your turmoil to subside in sense and know-how, rhyming clear. Privileged landscape, the road crosses, very level all the way, while the rising moon looks ashen, while the evening winds at play. Nature here is plain and simple, and the mountains all stand tall. Heading home, I'll turn domestic, sampling gold wine before last call. And I have too much here, as suits Lynn. I just wanted to read one earlier poem, the first of the so-called Pindaric hymns. He fashioned a number of them on the odes of Pindar, mainly triadic stanzas, 3 at a time, to make a cluster of, say, 6 or 9 or 12 that made sense to this day. Still people trying to figure out what exactly they want. This had no title, and it's a fragment, but it ends as a fragment. The opening is clear. Just as that feast day, the farmer still goes out early to check his field before dawn, with cooling flashes from a hot night dropping all the time, and thunder now sounding far off. The stream climbs back into its track. The ground is fresh and green. After a heaven-sent invigorating rain, the grapevine drips, and orchard trees stand shining, calm in the sunlight. They'll stand there in good weather, no single master over them, with nature everywhere miraculous in godlike beauty, good and strong, to bring them up in one tender embrace. At other times of year, pretending to sleep up in the sky or down among plants and people, while the faces of poets will join in mourning. Though forlorn all along, they seem to be sensing what's next, the same knowing way that nature stays at rest. Now the day gets its start, I waited and saw coming. May what I saw, holy as it was, be what I say, now older in itself than all the ages, higher than gods both east and west. All of nature comes awake with weapons clashing, and from the very top of the air down to the depths, by set law, the way she once was out of chaos conceived, rapture feels renewed, the all-creating one again. And just as fire will spark a man's eye when something high-minded comes to him, so do signs and doings of the world catch fire a second time in the poet's mind. And whatever happened before, even the least felt, comes clear just now. Those who worked the field for us and smiled, looking like serfs, come to be recognized, the only ever-living ones, the gods' whole power. Ask into them, their spirit moves through song with the day's sun and warm air to grow in, while storms in the upper air, and even those more thoroughly prepared deep down in time, meaning much more and clearer to us, drift between earth and sky among the nations. These musings have a common spirit to end up quietly inside the poet's soul. We're briefly touched, though long well known to infinite sense, It quakes at the memory, and once the sacred flame ignites there, the fruit love carried us as a work of gods and humans, attesting to both, succeeds in song. It's how the poets say, Semele, when she desired to see God with her own eyes, had lightning flashed down on her house. She was divinely struck and bore fruit of that storm, the holy Bacchus. And ever since, earth's sons can drink celestial fire with no risk to themselves. Poets, it should suit us to stand bareheaded in God's thunderstorms and take our Father's lightning right in our own hands to offer the people this heavenly gift wrapped in song. For only when the heart is pure and we're like children with blameless hands does that beam, pure as it is, not sear us to the touch. Though deeply shaken, able to feel the sufferings of someone stronger through the storms crashing down, as the God storms in, the heart stays intact. But how it hurts when from hurts me, I'll say this now, I came close to seeing into heaven. Those there, they were the ones cast me down, lower than the living, a false priest into the dark. So I'd sing those who want to learn the warning song out there.